back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Now, last year we spoke with Chris Harris from Couchbase, who joined me in a conversation about the challenges that businesses continue to face with legacy technology. But this year I've invited the CTO of Couchbase's leading data platform, and his name is Ravi Mayuram. And we're going to discuss insights from their recent report, which revealed a large-scale cloud overspend in the industry, and also new tech adoption and the kind of impact that it's having on businesses, and how to develop a decentralized model. So we got a lot to get through. So buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you're listening in the world, I'm going to beam your ears all the way to the US, where Ravi is going to be talking about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Ravi. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
First, thank you so much, Neil, for having me on this show, and glad to be here. But myself, I've been in this software industry for a while now, 25 plus years, and built various systems, and all in the system software side of things, operating systems, application servers, software as a service, databases, and here I'm building the sort of the next version of databases called the NoSQL databases, as we call it here. So along the way, I learned a lot of stuff and brought all those learnings together to see how we can shape the next generation of conversation on databases.
And I'm curious, have you always been a database guy, or what lit that spark and put you on this path that you're on right now? Or ultimately, what was your origin story? I feel there's got to be a story of some sort there of how you got into this business.
And yes, as for how I got into this business, it's just my natural curiosity. And I guess, I have sort of perhaps a little bit of more of the analytical type of mind.
Yeah.
My innate curiosity sort of led me to sort of tinkering with software pretty early in my life. And, that's what led me to sort of building infrastructure type software all along. No, not always been a database guy, though. This is my second tour of duty in databases. I've built, my career started by writing very low-level stuff in operating systems. HP, Unix is where it started. So my sort of deep links in the valley goes all the way to the HP way, as we used to call it, which was a way of sort of, live, work, and play all together. A good philosophy on which many of these Silicon Valley companies have been founded, sort of based on those values. So that's where I got started writing operating systems and the lower level stuff. And then as my career advanced, I started growing higher up in the stack, writing application servers, mobile systems, search systems, information retrieval, data retrieval. These are sort of the fields. And so bringing all these learnings together back into sort of modernizing the database. So this is the second tour of duty, so to say, in the database world for me.
Love that. And of course, as you said, that path led you to Couchbase, which is recently released your latest cloud evolution report. And that's what put you on my radar. So can you set the scene and tell me more about the report and who you surveyed there?
Yeah. This was a very important thing for us because, as you know, with in the changing sort of landscape, which was sort of in one sense already in motion with this digital transformation wave, which was accelerated with sort of the pandemic event, where sort of as it is, people were working remotely, and we all became a little bit more digital first, physical next, because we were trying to avoid physical contact. So a lot of stuff was online, ordering online. Everything was happening, including your doctor visit before you actually sort of went and met someone physically. So all the business process and systems behind this had to just accommodate and enhance so that this is another mode of interaction and not sort of leave it with our earlier mode of interaction, where digital was just an assist. Physical was the sort of the first, whereas the reversal is what has happened. So this is sort of going through a lot of transformation in a lot of enterprises. So just to understand that better, we had commissioned this sort of survey talked to a little over 650 CIOs, CDOs, CTOs, people who are actually helping businesses transform. This is no longer a case of IT on the sidelines doing something, business doing something else. IT is the business in one sense. If you go with the digital first sort of initiatives, which are the norm now. So when we surveyed, and in this process, one of the tools that has been a great help for this transformation is cloud. Because that gives you the ability to just simply commission compute and start doing what is your domain's expertise on top of that. If you're retail sales, retail enterprise, you simply have to put your systems in place for the sales to happen. You don't have to worry about all the IT infrastructure behind it, how to procure machines, how to sort of install, manage, all that stuff is sort of taken care of. So compute is available on the tap, so to say. It's available as a service. This is the consumption-based computing model. That's what the transition is. So, which is a great sort of enabler for all these digital transformation journeys. So we wanted to understand, we know that was well underway. And we, as part of this survey of what are various things that were happening, one of the findings was that, yes, everybody is going to the cloud. But the cloud bill, everybody knows, is sort of the meter keeps ticking and the bills come calling. And one of the surprising elements of the survey, we all knew there was certain element of excess that happens whenever you're going from one paradigm to the other. The real surprise was that about almost 30% of the actual cost of going to the cloud was basically being wasted. And the 8.7 million or number, the specific figure you may have seen there, of a 35 million odd spending. That was a pretty huge surprise. And in that survey, the basically contributors to the overspending were pretty revealing for us. So I think that was the sort of, in one sense, the central finding of this was that, yes, we knew there was some, overages that are there, but 8.5 odd million out of a 33 million annual average spend was a significant number. And once you put a number to it, you truly understand the pain, because that's a serious amount of money which could be sort of used for truly advancing your cause, as opposed to sort of wasting it at a certain level.
And I'm glad you highlighted that, because that was one of the things that just jumped off the pages to me as well. And I guess the move to the cloud was inevitable, and yet was inevitable. But as enterprises are still being caught out by issues such as things like inflexible pricing plans, effective management tools, and data not stored where it needs to be, I suppose the big question needs to be, especially with that overspend figure that you mentioned now, is how can businesses avoid falling into these traps? Because we are quite a way down the road now, aren't we? And I'd like to think that, especially in this time of uncertainty, that businesses are trying to be a little bit more forward thinking.
True. We are quite a ways down because this cloud journey at a certain level had sort of begun almost 20 years ago, if you will. About 10, 12 years ago, it became something that was sort of being commercialized, being available on the tap. But the journey has begun quite a while ago. But at the same time, this also feels like we are at the sort of earlier innings of the first innings of it, so to say. A few more to go. And that comes from the fact that the cloud itself has also evolved and matured, and it affords for you to do a lot more. And so people have to be more careful in how they actually leverage the cloud. For example, cloud is now an amalgamation of three things, which is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and application as a service. Sometimes you get the entire application available to you from the cloud. We are all sort of aware of that. Sometimes you want the platform, which is where stuff like databases and analytical systems, these come into play, these are all platforms as a service. And then finally, infrastructure, which is your hardware, your disk storage, your compute, your CPU they are also being made available to you. So you can now build your service in any of these three tiers. So first understanding that and then investing the right kind of money and resource into that, I think is the place where enterprises typically sort of make a mistake, where they sort of overspend because they thought they could build it themselves. And in the process, run into the next set of issues, which is data is where it needs to be, kind of a thing. Or the same data, you're sort of, if you really look at it, many a times we move the data to multiple systems. And earlier it was not a big cost issue. Now it is a huge cost issue because your network access, network movement costs money. Earlier you did not have to, just simply a copy. I'm just copying the data from here to there is how we looked at it. Now it's a service. So every time you move data, you're actually paying for it. So all this data movement from a database to a cache to a search system to an analytical system, every time you're copying the data, it is actually costing. And this also leads to the next problem called data sprawl. And that now brings other class of problems to be solved, which cost more, which is around management of all these, securing all these, and sort of the egress and ingress of data. All these have to be basically now orchestrated differently. This is a different paradigm when you go to the cloud. So a combination of all these factors is where, and at a certain level, yes, you can say some of it is inflexible pricing, because that also contributes to this, because you want now more fine grained sort of pricing versus where things are is maybe a little bit more coarse grained. These will adapt and evolve. But the fundamental problem is people who are sort of building based on an enterprise stack in mind, when they simply move that to the cloud, it doesn't work one-on-one. Just cut and paste doesn't work. You just have to understand fundamentally cloud is different, and what projects need to go to the cloud and how you want to do that in the cloud versus how you used to do differently in the enterprise. There's got to be a little bit more scrutiny into that. And sometimes in a hurry, enterprises also sort of bring this on themselves by sort of hurrying into the cloud without understanding all the sort of consequences of that.
And I suspect for many business leaders, decision makers, and IT directors, etc., they're going to be dealing with all three of those different areas that we've just highlighted there. Some will be on individual basis, as others will be using all three on a regular basis. But what is the secret in making a cloud strategy live up to its promise? Because I suspect you've probably seen a lot of people making the same mistakes again and again. Maybe they get distracted by the shiny new solution rather than the value-driven initiative, etc. So what can they be doing better to help it live up to its promise, do you think?
I think one of the sort of, I'll limit this from sort of the view where I see when I talk to customers from, which is all around data. And data is a huge piece. And the digital transformation is all about just data. When we talk about digital, we are saying inside ourselves, it's all data, right? And so one of the fundamental problems is that we have taken legacy sort of infrastructure, put that on the cloud. And now people are sort of using that to say, oh, this is available from the cloud. So it's at a certain level, it solves a certain class of problems because you don't have to worry about, patching and upgrade and all that kind of stuff. But yet you're still using 40-year-old infrastructure, stuff that were built 40 years ago in the cloud. And just to give you an example, until very recently, I used to have a physical landline, analog landline at home. I used to be paying like $70 monthly for that and not make a single phone call. So, legacy, and then I, of course, changed out of that very recently. But I'm saying for the last 20 years, I've been keeping this because out of sheer habit, but it's costing me dearly. So your legacy infrastructure costs, because the investment is in the newer infrastructure, which is more efficient and it's modern and gives you option to do a lot more than what your legacy infrastructure did. So in many cases, that's the first evolution in the cloud is take whatever was legacy and make it run from the cloud. That doesn't give you the economies that you're actually looking for. So in the data area, especially, this is where when you run the same legacy databases there, it doesn't give you. You have to run the modern databases, which are built for the cloud reality, which is all about elastic computing, which is what we call as pay-as-you-go or consumption-based computing, which is that it expands to your need and also contracts back to your need. Because as we all know, 1 or 2 days, in let's take retail commerce as an example, there are 1 or 2 days in the year is when the real, the Black Fridays, as they say around here in the US, is when actually you hit profitability. The rest of the 364 days, you are not, in one sense. And so that one day, the amount of traffic is like 30 or 100 times in some cases than the previous days. So that's about expansion on that day and then contracting back to your average routine sales that's happening. So this you cannot do with legacy infrastructure, this sort of scaling out and scaling back in and stuff like that. And so using modern infrastructure will give you that. And also it reduces the threat surface area. So now your security and management becomes simpler and easier. And so fundamental point is using modern infrastructure in the cloud, you'll eventually lead to more efficient business processes. Your technology stack will become more leaner. And finally, you will be spending less on the infrastructure cost in the cloud. These combinations is what is going to make it more efficient and agile of the enterprises to get to the next level.
And I think one of the big trends of 2022 is whenever you pick up a smartphone and you'll find yourself scrolling down the latest news or trends, everything is about Web3 now. There's been a lot of hype around it. But of course, in recent weeks, it's been tarnished somewhat with the crypto crash, scams in NFTs, overhype around the metaverse, etc. But can you tell me more about why you believe that there is definite potential for businesses to explore blockchain technology and what that will mean for data? Because outside of all the other shiny things we were just talking about with Web3, that seems to be where the exciting stuff's happening, right?
Absolutely true. The Web3 3 or the trend somehow got too intertwined with just the crypto side of the equation. There are multiple trends over there. Let me just pick two and give you a sense of that. First is the Web3 is one of the main charter out there is sort of distributing your applications so that it is faster and more responsive so consumers can actually use, as opposed to sort of the slowness that's inherently in many of our applications. Because the reason is that, let's say I could be sitting here in California and sometimes the data is actually fetched from somewhere in Atlanta or something like that. So how do you avoid that? That's the whole idea of distributed computing, so that the data comes to you closest from wherever you're sitting. So Web 3.0 addresses that, where it sort of does the application tier, the end user UI tier is sort of closer to the end user by distributing that whole thing and packaging. So that is a WebAssembly and a whole bunch of sort of work that happens there, which is absolutely needed. And on the backend side is this blockchain, which is, as a technology, is here to stay, but not from the standpoint of crypto and one more new coin on a daily basis or NFT or some fashion. It's not. That is basically that's a trend, versus the fundamental. That's more like fashion. The fundamental trend is one of having a decentralized way of exchanging currency. It's about trust in the internet, if you will, which is that currently, if I have to exchange some money with you, I somehow seem to go through a middle organization which seems to know, my mother's maiden name, my social security number, whatnot, right? I mean, only then I can do commerce with you on the net.
Yeah.
That with the central authority having all this information in one sense, that's what it will decentralize, where me and you can do this commerce by exchanging, the equivalent of a $10 bill or 10-pound bill between us, and done. You don't need to know anything else I don't need to give. So it's about privacy, it's about security, it's about trust. And those principles on which blockchain and off-chain processing that happens to enable that, they are here to stay. And they will mature. They will actually enable a lot of commerce as we go forward. So those trends I would watch. I would carefully weed out the fluff, the chaff from the real substance, and continue to sort of look into that area and invest. And so databases are at the end of on the back side of it. When all these transactions happen, you want a record of it. Where do you want to show? So distributed databases like what we have built here become the infrastructure behind some of these.
And although I guess it's no surprise that decentralization and the concept behind it has extended to the IT industry now, business infrastructure must, of course, be in place to achieve the benefits. Otherwise, application developers just won't be able to fulfill this. So can you tell me more about how you see the future of IT and how it must mean managing data anywhere, really, from the edge, server, cloud, like I said, anywhere, isn't it?
Correct. Absolutely. I think as you see it, we have so far kept the data infrastructure very central because we understand data is paramount for the business. We understand the value of the data. So to this day, a lot of good data actually sits in mainframes, which is like sitting. It's like a Fort Knox. You cannot get to there. But yet, most of the interactions that we do is at the edge. We all use our mobile phones. So much of the commerce happens there, entertainment happens there, and work happens there. And people have also become more distributed now, in one sense, with remote work sort of having its own life, in one sense, so to say. So in this sort of an environment, you just have to look at sort of your fundamental infrastructure differently to say that how quickly can it adapt to this change and how quickly can the data be available at the point of engagement. Most important thing is that when you're engaging, many times when you're working with a certain application, we will see the circle of death sort of rotating, waiting for something to happen. And we end up blaming it on the network being slow. It's mostly not the network. It's the fact that your application was running on your physical device, mobile phone or whatever you're using, but the data that is actually fetching is coming after, multiple firewall hops and sitting in some data center, which is tens of thousands of miles away from you. So that's the fundamental problem. And those who have many have understood this problem, but it's not the majority. It's the early majority kind of people who have understood this. So they're the ones starting this movement of distributing the data to your point of engagement, which could be at the edge, real IoT edge, the human edge, which is the mobile devices, or even decentralizing the cloud, because even in the cloud, you want the data to be in availability zones or the cloud zone edge, which is closer to you. So that's how the decentralization of the cloud is happening. They have their own sort of edges. Plus, there is a human edge, and then beyond that is the IoT edge, the sensors and the industrials and the agricultural edges, and every domain has its own edge.
And of course, nothing upsets anyone in IT more than the phrase, the network is slow, or blaming the network. You see people reaching to toss those tables straight away when somebody outside of IT says the network's slow.
It's a convenient one to blame it on, but it's usually only, it should share a fair portion of the blame, but not always.
Absolutely. And what excites you about the road ahead? We're at the end of this year now, starting to look at a new year of opportunity. So what's your big focus going to be next year, and what excites you about them?
Yeah, I think the focus going forward would be, how to make, there are three prongs, if you will. One is how to make it easier and more frictionless for developers to sort of build applications. Because with stuff like Web 3.0 paradigm on the one side, and as well as you have a lot of your commercial applications that have to get modernized, there's a lot that the application has to evolve in the next upcoming years. So how can we make that journey easier and easier for the developers? All the way from getting started, how to know, and then how quickly can they develop. So how can we, almost get to a point where we can say, oh, there's an app for that. It should be that simple. Enterprise apps are not that simple to build, fully aware of that. But there are a lot of friction because the tech stack is evolving pretty fast. And so how can we sort of simplify that so that it becomes easy for people to develop would be one big theme for us. The second theme is there's a lot of, we are in the middle of the age of the maturing of the AI that's happening. There had been the hype, and now there is AI, which has sort of penetrated lots of areas, including, if you really look, the fundamental way things are going to move forward is that, like just use cars as an example. Now, because of all the AI work that is done in that field, cars have become autonomous. As in, like, cars can drive themselves, humans are there just to supervise them. This sort of an effect will happen in many fields. Just to be controversial here a bit, I mean, at a certain level, it'll get to a point where, most of the code will be written by AI, and the engineers will be supervising that code. Yeah. That's how we should be thinking in one sense, right? And because there's so much more to be done. And so it has to get commoditized at a certain level, and AI will write the sort of boilerplate version of it in a much better fashion than what we had ever done before. So there are these large language models which can predict what the next stuff we have to build would be. So based on that, a lot of good stuff will happen. So in that mix, where AI has so far been is basically very algorithm driven. There are two portions to AI. We all know this. One is data, other is the algorithm on top of it. Where the next generation of stuff will happen is more data-driven AI. So then the databases are more in the middle of that. So algorithms will evolve, of course, but then data is also parallel evolving. So this whole initiative of making the algorithms more adaptive to the data changes is the change that's happening. So we would be working to make databases that much more easier in this new reality of the training models working with a very much more flexible database, which is our calling card at a certain level. So that will be another sort of theme. And then, of course, there's a lot on the edge. We have an edge database, which has got a sync capability. So how can we sort of make the development, management, securing of this whole thing all the way from the edge to the cloud? There's a lot of work in the areas of management, deployment, administration, securing this whole your web of cloud to edge deployment of your applications. So these would be the three themes in which we'd be so a lot of excitement in terms of what we have to build and what people will build on top of us. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. Sounds like you're going in for a very busy year. And of course, we started the podcast today talking about your origin story and what put you on this path. And we've now almost come full circle. So if I was to ask you to look back and reflect on your career, none of us are able to achieve any amount of success without a little help along the way. So is there a particular person that you're grateful towards, maybe somebody that helped you get where you are, or just saw something in you and invested a little time in you? Who would that be? And we can give a little thank you out there in the universe to that person.
There are a lot of people who sort of, it takes in some cases more than a village. It takes a whole, you always have to, when you look back, when you think, who you are as a person very fundamentally is sort of shaped by your parents. So, of course, a huge thanks sort of belongs to them, how, what they instill you in a very early age, I think influences you a lot when it comes to core values and beliefs and, your personality at a certain level. Then as you grow, there are a lot of good teachers who infuse this curiosity in you in an early age of sort of, be it a science or be it literature or be it music. Those are my three main areas of influence, if you will, which is I'm passionate about. And so your teachers all the way from elementary school deserve a huge shout out for all that they have done, influence in sort of in ways you didn't even understand back then, but eventually you. And in the context of Couchbase, I have to thank both my executive team here and who it's a team sport what we do here, and any enterprise software, so to say, or any software, and so definitely the executive team and also the engineering team, which is sort of made this a reality. You can sit and talk and, can have ideas and vision and all that kind of stuff. But a great team builds software which is actually tangibly available and benefits others. So I'm deliberately not using names here, but because there are enough people who have been very instrumental in the success of this. And so I owe it all to them. In my mind, definitely the names and forms are there, but
Yeah.
but that there are plenty of them, and I owe all of them a deep, gratitude for all that they've done for me.
Yeah, I think we don't very often sit back and think about all the people that have impacted us and how we impact other people in the way we are around them and the time we invest in them as well. So it's a great answer there. But before I let you go, for anyone listening, just want to find out more information about the report that we referenced, find out more information about Couchbase, contact your team, all those kind of things. What's the best starting point?
Yes, I think it'd be fantastic if people can, of course, reach me in LinkedIn. Just my full name, Ravi Mayuram. Will be absolutely happy to be in touch with people. Really love that. Available. Again, same name in the Twitter handle. You can sort of look for me. As for finding more information about what we do here, Couchbase.com would be the place to go look and see all that we have done and all the releases. And if you want to try our database, it's very easy these days. You just simply have to go to a website and you can try it. It's couchbase.com/product/Capella, where you can simply fire up a database instance and play with it and start having fun. So you can sort of get to know me, get to know the company, and actually more than just talking and seeing, you can actually do something with it by playing with Capella. So those would be good ways to interact and engage with us.
Awesome. Well, I'll have links to the show notes so people can find that nice and easily. We've covered so much in a short amount of time today, from your advice and insights around avoiding that 7.5 million cloud overspend, how new tech and adoption can impact a business, developing a decentralized model, and all that was washed down with your personal origin story and what put you on this path and how you became the database guy. But more than anything, just a big thank you for taking the time to sit down with me and share that with everyone listening today.
Fantastic. It was a pleasurable and a pleasant conversation. Really appreciate you making it easy and nice and informative for our audience as well. So thank you so much for your help in all of this.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview as much as I did. But a quick reminder that this podcast is brought to you by Flipper, the #1 marketplace to buy and sell online businesses and startups. So the question I'm going to ask you before I go is, do you own or run an online business? And have you ever considered selling your site, your store, your tech, or your app? Well, with world-class combined matching technology, dedicated brokers, and end-to-end services, all at the most efficient price, Flipper is making selling your online business simple. So to get a free valuation for your business, simply visit flipper.com/techtalks, where each month thousands of online business owners are exiting with Flipper. Again, to learn more, visit flipper.com/techtalks. That's FLIPPA, flipper.com/techtalks. So I'm curious, did anything resonate with you from today's conversation? Is there something that you'd like to add to this conversation? Or is there just a question you'd like to ask me? Or even if you'd want to come on the podcast, whatever it is, you know my details by now. I say them at the end of every episode for a good reason. And that is, each and every one of you are what this podcast is about. And I want to get your voice on here. This show's not about me. It's about you and the problems that you're experiencing and how you overcome them with technology. So email me as always, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @Neil C. Hughes. And I also invite you to join me again tomorrow, and I hope you'll join me. But until next time, don't be a stranger.